Hello, it's Randall Craig on Professionally Speaking TV. Welcome back. I've got George Torok here. George, we're talking about presentation skills now, something that you also speak to groups about. Tell me, what are the three biggest presentation mistakes that executives make when they're giving a presentation? What are the three biggest mistakes that executives make?
Three biggest mistakes. First one probably is reading their speech. Someone from the public relations department has prepared a written speech and the CEO stands up there and reads it. That's a big mistake because there's no warmth and it's not believable. The only time you should ever read a speech, there is an exception, if the lawyer says read it this way, read it that way.
Okay, so reading a speech, that's a tough one. And there's no connection to the audience. What's the second biggest mistake?
When a CEO tries to use humor by telling a joke.
Why is that a mistake?
Well, they have the right intent, but the wrong tool, the wrong mechanism. Most jokes, see, they heard a joke yesterday while they were having coffee or in a bar, and that time it sounded pretty funny. So they thought, oh, I'll tell that joke tomorrow in my speech. Why it's wrong is because to deliver a joke on stage takes a whole skill set in itself. Stand-up comedians rehearse, and they still bomb every once in a while.
Now, we've had Dave Broadfoot on the show. We've Paul Huschild. He's coming up in a week or so. Now, these people are very good.
They're pros.
And there's some improvisation. Is improvisation not good then?
Not when you're telling a joke. And when I say a joke, it's, there's three guys go into a bar, that type of thing. That has nothing to do, and the reason not to use it is this. Number one, they do it poorly. Number two, it has nothing to do with the message, the point that they're delivering. And third and most important is most jokes put someone down. They make fun of someone, some other profession, some other religion, some other sex, you name it. They put someone down. That's how most jokes work. That's the humor in it. And when you're standing up on the front of the stage and you're the CEO, you don't want to be pushing people away from you. The only exception is if you're making fun of the competition. So instead of you telling jokes, what a CEO could do or should do, and what I recommend is they find a story about themselves, about something silly they did, a mistake they made, a mildly embarrassing moment that they're willing to reveal to the audience. And what that does is it does two things. Number one, it'll probably make the audience laugh or at least lighten up. And number two, more importantly, it means the audience will like you more because you've just admitted that you are imperfect like them. And if you want your audience to like you, show how you are like them.
Even though a CEO might not at all be like, for example, a clerk or a factory worker that they're speaking to.
Yes, exactly. But it's the secret is to find ways that you are like them. So, and the easiest way is to show, well, two ways. One is to show that you're imperfect, you have imperfections, you tried something that didn't work. Now, don't make a joke, CEO, don't tell how you messed up the business plan. That's not what the factory worker wants to hear. No, you might tell a joke how one of your hobbies is cooking and how you you burned the pot on the weekend. You were cooking spaghetti and you burned it. Something as mundane as that, but people will relate to.
Got it. What's the third biggest presentation mistake that managers and executives make?
Not looking at the people they're talking to.
Not looking
and not making eye contact. Now, it's such a simple thing. Now, here we are sitting here right now, and we're having a conversation, and it's only the two of us, so it's pretty easy for us to make eye contact. But the CEO, if you're talking to your staff of 20 or 200 or 2,000, everyone in that audience expects you to look at them at some point in time.
This is a problem, because even if you're in a small group situation, 10 people, when I'm looking at you, for example, that means that I cannot be looking at somebody else. Hello there, and you're off to the side. So how do you deal with that? Where should your eyes actually be looking? Or should they be constantly scanning?
Well, not scanning, and not scanning in the sense of where you're doing this kind of thing, kind of just moving all around like a blip on a Pong game type of thing. No. Instead, what your eyes should move is they should move in short little jumps. So you look, and the best thing to do is to move your eyes around the audience in imperfect X's. Draw X's with your eyes. So look at someone down here near the front of the room, look at someone over there to the right, someone over there but midway, as you deliver a phrase to them. Now do it so that your eyes don't appear to be darting, but that you're simply moving them, and you coordinate your eye movement with your phrases. And then it looks natural. And that way, if you have made contact with someone, eye contact directly, at least once, maybe a few times, then they forget the times that you weren't looking at them.
What happens if you decide to focus on somebody to deliver a particular phrase, and they seem to be, doing the BlackBerry thing, or they're totally tuned out? What should you do there? Because, clearly you're looking at them. They look up. It's going to be embarrassing. Do you just pass them over to find somebody who is paying attention to you?
Probably, and when I say probably, the determining factor is who's going to be more uncomfortable. Is it you or that person in the audience? If that person looks up and they're suddenly embarrassed because you were looking at them, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they'll pay better attention. This is the CEO here talking. Pay attention. Don't be fooling with the BlackBerry. But if you as the CEO can maintain your eye contact with that person, and when they look up, you just give them a little smile, and they can take that to mean whatever they want.
Now, a lot of people in presentations now have got their computers open, or they've got their BlackBerries or iPhones. They're busy tweeting away. This whole world of social media has changed the purpose of the audiences. If somebody's tweeting away what a great presentation you're doing, that's a very different message, because they are paying attention. They're broadcasting, in fact, your message out to a lot of other people. So what's your advice now when you've got this social media crowd, if you will, or people at least who look like they could be doing something? Should you be telling people, hey, put your stuff away? Or should you just disregard and let people do whatever they like?
People learn in their own ways, and today's audience is very different from an audience even 5 years ago. It's tremendously. And what you say with the use of BlackBerries and people being tweeting or updating their Facebook page about the message you're giving is true. And the speakers today now, and the same thing for cell phones. Someone's phone. At one point, we used to say, "Don't let your phone ring," and today, number one, you can't do that because so many people just want to be connected. Most will set it to vibrate or something. But the bottom line is this: you, the speaker, don't know what's going on in the minds of the people out there. So assume the best. Assume the best. Now, today it's people with laptops and BlackBerries, but 10 years ago it was people that sat and looked at you like this. And you're thinking, oh, that person hates me, they don't like me. You have no idea. Maybe they're cold. Maybe it's actually cold. Maybe they're tired and they're trying to stay awake because their kid was sick all night. You have no idea. Probably the best, a good lesson for me was many years ago when I was speaking to an audience that I knew the audience. There was one fellow who sat at the side like this, and he had the grumpiest face you ever could imagine. He's looking, and every time I looked over at him, I went inside. I just went, ooh! It was just this feeling, and I'm thinking, he hates me. At the end of the presentation, he walked up to me without a smile on his face, and he shook my hand, and he said, "George, that was the best presentation we've ever had here." Now, he just was one of those guys who didn't smile and sat there and looked grumpy. That was just his outside, the way he looked.
Not the way he thought.
No, and you never know. So you can't assume that they're saying something bad about you, or they're ignoring you.
What happens and how do you deal with presentations to audiences that are just not happy? They're disgruntled. They've got a reason to be upset. And you're the person making the presentation to them. That happens many times in business.
Acknowledge the reality. Don't sugarcoat. If you're giving bad news, don't sugarcoat it in some syrupy way. Acknowledge the reality of the times they are today. If you're up there to say that, hey, we're going to let some people go, then acknowledge the reality. Don't blame, and keep it short. Whenever you have bad news, keep it short.
And good news, make it very, very long.
Well, good people are willing to listen to good news longer than they are to bad news. If you talk too long, the danger is this. If you're delivering bad news, and the longer you talk, the more people are playing inside their head, and they're saying things, I don't believe him, but what about this, but what about that? If you keep it short, they can only focus on what you said and say reality. Don't promise, oh, well, this is going to be better for all of you. When you're out of a job, you'll be better because your next career will be better than this place. Don't say dumb things like that. By the way, I've had bosses say that to me as they were letting me go.
And the ironic thing is that they were right.
And it was true, but at the time, I didn't feel that way.
So how long is the right length of a presentation? You're a manager, for example, doing a sales pitch. You're a salesperson doing a sales pitch. You're a manager speaking to the troops. You're an industry speaker talking about trends in the industry at a convention or something. How long is the right length for a presentation?
Very good question.
And how do you know?
Very good question. The short answer is that the presentations today should be shorter than they were last year, the year before that. And the reason for that is because people's attention span is shorter. For that reason, it means you need to get to your message much quicker. You know it's successful if you're there to sell a contract or sell a product. When the people on the other side of the table say, "Where do we sign?" you're done. Maybe you plan to do a 30-minute presentation, but you're 5 minutes in. They say, "Where do we sign?" You're done.
Now, you had said something in that answer that intrigued me. You said that people's attention span is shorter today. Is that because people are just have shorter attention spans, they can't concentrate? Or is it because the people we're presenting to are younger people, the so-called millennials, and they're used to 30-second sound bites? Is it one or the other? Have you thought through that at all? I'm curious.
I think it's a combination of both. I think it's not only the younger generation that has been raised on what people say, not so much instant gratification, but quicker gratification. Even the older folks, Randall, like you and me, our attention spans are changed. And I'll give you a good example.
Yes.
When I was in high school, I worked as an usher in the theater. And when I was there, the movie The Godfather came out. Mm-hmm. It played in the theater for 6 months. So you ask me a line, I could give any line from the movie. I've seen it hundreds of times. Now, I love the movie. I love that movie. And I saw it on TV again recently. And I couldn't believe how impatient I was, how slow everything was going, how long it was taking. I was sitting there, come on, kill somebody, hurry up, add something in there. It was so boring. Now, I had seen it hundreds of times and loved it every time. Now, my attention span wouldn't allow me to sit there. So our attention span is getting shorter. And if you look at movies, you look at entertainment, it's a great example. The movie Batman Begins. Mm-hmm. If you watch that movie with a stopwatch, you'll find that the scenes in that movie are 10 seconds long or shorter. And the camera angle keeps changing every few seconds. And the reason is because those changes keep people engaged. Whereas Gone with the Wind, you remember how great a movie that was? It was
a very long movie, too,
very
wasn't it?
Long movie, but very slow, long scenes. So people want shorter sentences, shorter presentations today.
Well, you can't change camera angles in presentations. You know,
that's why you have to be shorter sentences.
But if somebody says you've got 45 minutes to get up and give your speech, or the meeting's an hour, and gee, the first 20 minutes in the agenda are you doing it, what kind of tricks and tips might you suggest that a speaker uses, a manager, when they're doing this kind of presentation, to hold people's attention?
One of the simplest techniques is to use rhetorical questions. And this does a couple things for you as a presenter. Number one, when you pose a rhetorical question to your audience, you engage them more than you do with a statement. Statements do not tend to engage people unless they're very bold, very controversial. But questions always engage people. So you engage their mind. That's the first part. And the audience is sitting thinking, yeah, that's a good question. I wonder what the answer is. And then you answer it. So then the speech starts to sound like a conversation, not a lecture. The other reason why you ask a rhetorical question is when we ask a question, our voice naturally inflects on a question while it doesn't on a statement. Statements tend to be flat. So even a person without voice or drama training will inflect on a question. So your voice becomes more interesting, so you're changing your voice. That makes it more interesting to listen to.
That's very interesting. I will try and be less monotonic as I ask my questions, George. One final question. Who would you say is the biggest influence on your career? You mentioned Peter Erzbender. Are there any others beyond him?
Peter was clearly the largest influence for a number of reasons, mainly because he was a friend and mentor to me. I've looked at there's so many people who I get inspiration from. Sylvester Stallone, believe it or not, and here's the reason why. Sylvester Stallone, he's a lousy actor. Come on, he's a lousy actor, but he has worked tremendously hard at achieving his goals. And very early, when the Rocky movie came out, he gave up a lot so that he could be the star of that. So the lessons from that is to do the things you need to do, give up the things you're willing to give up to really get what you want. And so for that reason, he's certainly an inspiration because he's successful.
And what did you have to give up to get the success that you have today?
Well, I left a corporate career, left a steady job. Probably that was the big sacrifice in the beginning. And then along the way, it's sacrificing your time is probably the biggest thing that you give up. For example, through my radio show, that takes up a lot of time, and sometimes I begrudge it, but I get so much back from it, so it was worth it. There's no question.
Great answer. George, if people want to find out more about you, they can go to your website, www.torok.com, T-O-R-O-K.
You got it.
.com, and there's a whole ton of stuff there, a whole bunch of articles as well, and presentations and marketing. They can get your book, Secrets of Power Marketing, Promoting Brand You. They can get that at your website as well, can't they?
They can find it at the website.
Thanks for coming in, and thank you for joining us on Professionally Speaking TV. I'm Randall Craig. If you go to our website, professionallyspeakingtv.com, you can see an archive of all of our past episodes and see who's coming up next. So, till next time, this is Randall Craig. If you want to make a change, if you want to make an impact, first you have to say it professionally. See you next week.